Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. The proposal by G7 countries to tighten economic sanctions against Russia is unlikely to have a serious impact, according to Frontline Group CEO Jason Musyoka. During the first day of the summit in Japan yesterday, world leaders emphasized their support for Ukraine will not waver. President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Hiroshima today as he continues to appeal for military assistance amid the invasion.
There has been, of course, the sanctions that have been put forward. The UK has been very vocal, particularly on the sanctioning of purchasing of diamonds. But it's very inconsequential if you consider that the UK consumes only 1% of Russia's diamonds. And so regardless of the noise that we really hear, the impact, if you look at the impact of the sanctions, including the new ones proposed now, particularly on sanctions around the purchasing of Russian diamonds, it's not very clear just how much impact this is going to have. But by and large, they're not going to be high impact.
Musyoka says while Zelensky may have the support of the West, there may be some restrictions to how much assistance can be rendered.
We've seen Zelensky being quite frustrated and asking for a much more forceful and aggressive approach from Western powers, but they really haven't been forthcoming. The U.S. is much more removed geographically, so it has been forward, but nevertheless, there are also limitations to how much U.S. can really get involved. And by the way, the impact is perhaps also limited because of the range of interests that are being undermined here.
Now, the war between Russia and Ukraine remains a key point of discussion as leaders of the G7 meet in Hiroshima, Japan. For more on this, we are joined by Liubov Abravitova, the Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, in studio. Very good evening to you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I suppose the stakes are pretty high as for Ukraine's anticipated counteroffensive, especially how it could be a really important test of Ukraine's ability to make some significant new gains against Russian forces, won't it?
First of all, we have to remember that counteroffensive already started in September last year.
Yeah.
And by having that counteroffensive, Ukraine was able to regain back half of the territories that were captured by Russians. As of today, all the efforts of my president and all the government directed to get stronger and more long-range weapons in order to restore Ukraine's territorial integrity and to get back territories according to internationally recognized borders of Ukraine of 1991.
Yeah. So as G7 leaders have reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine for as long as it takes to bring lasting peace, as President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Japan for talks that was made, how significant is the support of the leaders of the world's most powerful democracies?
I always try to analyze the support through the lenses of economy and what is the percentage of GDP of each particular country given to Ukraine. And you will be surprised how smaller countries, particularly such as Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, are really giving a big piece of pie of their economy to help Ukrainians to survive and to remain their existence. The G7 are very crucial partners and providing a huge assistance for Ukraine. And we are welcoming the declaration that was accepted by all the leaders of G7. And I would argue with the analysis provided earlier today regarding how low or not impactful the harshening of sanctions can be. Because obviously, particularly on the diamond issue, and I am a part of the Kimberley process delegation of Ukraine. And I can tell you that the biggest consumers of diamonds in the world are those countries who represent G7. Though it is very technical probably to establish tracking of Russian diamonds in the short term, but definitely this mechanism will be found, and it will not allow Russia to use this asset to continue its terrorism in Ukraine.
Yeah, so you believe it will have a serious impact, because the guest had says it's unlikely to have a serious impact. According to, it was Jason Musyoka who was commenting. So in your view, it will bite?
I do believe it will, and I do believe that those sanctions that already being provided are just covered by Russian propaganda as those that are not painful for them. They are painful.
Yeah. So President Zelensky's in-person appearance in Japan at the G7 talks is obviously meant to galvanize global attention. Of course, bolstering the international support is a key priority as Ukraine prepares for what is seen as a major push to take back territory seized by Russia. I mean, that in itself speaks to a lot. Him going there in person is really meant to have some sort of messaging that is sent out to the world.
Yes, for 1 year since the beginning of Russian invasion in Ukraine, the president was not leaving the country and coordinating himself how the country would be surviving and continue to fight for the existence. Now, every appearance that made, it's a message. It's a message that, yes, we are fighting for all of you today. We are fighting against the enemy that it's not only waging war against Ukraine.
Yeah.
This is the war against our values, against international law, and I do believe that this presence in person really makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. The president's in-person visit to the summit also comes just hours after the U.S. agreed to allow training on American-made fighter jets. We know total international military aid is in the tens of billions of dollars when it comes to how much is invested in this war, with the U.S. being the lead donor. That's a lot riding on this likely upcoming counteroffensive.
I want to make it very clear, because there are a lot of speculations about the military assistance that has been provided to Ukraine. We are talking about huge amounts of money. We are talking about destructive weapons, of the modern weapons. I want to emphasize that Ukrainians today are protecting themselves, protecting their right to exist. And unfortunately, you cannot protect your civilians, your children, with ties and pens. And that's why that kind of assistance and training of Ukrainian military is very crucial for Ukraine.
So, with all of that, what happens if this offensive is not successful? Don't you think there'll be a lot of finger pointing, because Kiev couldn't turn around and say, we didn't have enough supplies, they weren't the supplies we requested? Could it not turn around to be a lot of blaming if it doesn't result in a success?
2 points. First of all, I don't have any doubts that counteroffensive will be successful. Second point, even if we don't have enough weapons, with any tool that we have in our hands, we all will protect our land till the last person, if it's needed.
Yeah. So what will happen if the push against Moscow's troop stalls? Surely then it will now play into the Western forces' fears of a prolonged war in Ukraine and provide ammunition to politicians in the Washington and European capitals who oppose this open-ended commitment to Kiev?
We speak today about the commitment of all the world to help Ukraine to get sustainable peace and security guarantees. The tool and mechanism for that was introduced by Ukraine, by my president, and was established already in December last year. And I'm talking about 10-point peace formula of Zelensky. And this is the way, and the only way, that we can today get peace, and get peace not only in Ukraine, but sustainable stability and security in the region and in the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us in studio and giving us this very important update.